Is Kickstarter going out of business? That is the question I'm asking right now. That is the question that I'm framing. And we're not talking literally in this moment, but there's been a subtle shift. There's been a change in the paradigm. And I'm not just talking about the past 6 months, the past 12 months, almost a year at this point, given how the world has shifted, how the hobby has shifted, but rather not only the technology, but other corporations and cabals looking and saying, I want 100% of the piece of that pie. I want 100% an interest-free loan, pure profit. And then when it hits retail, I'm going to even make more profit on top of that. A lot of places, a lot of powers that be are really kind of looking at the Kickstarter model and saying at this point, why do I need to participate? So let's kind of frame this before we turn it over to the comments. And if we look back, if we look at the dawn of the internet, Web 1.0, back when if you had a title called webmaster, no one knew what you did. You edited HTML and Notepad and you made 6 figures a year. But the idea of Web 1.0 was you were hanging out on GeoCities making all of your content. You were responsible for making content. And as things scaled up with your website, or if you were part of a corporation and you're putting your website forward, you would hire people to write articles. You would content marketing. We call it content marketing now. But you had to physically build up your website with information. And hopefully it was quality information or information that you couldn't get anywhere else. Getting those eyeballs on your website through the search engines. MySpace comes around, and before MySpace, there were echoes of it, but MySpace really crystallized it, and Facebook took the training wheels off when Facebook was initially implemented. That was Web 2.0. You do the work, I keep the money. So I just have a skeleton platform, and I have my users, forget about all the data mining that I'm doing on your personal habits and your clicks and everything that's going on, but you are creating the content for me to get more people, to get more eyeballs, to get higher ranking. You do the work, I keep the money. That moves into Web 2.0. And we're actually depending on who you ask, Web 4 or 5.0 at this point. So let's switch that over to Kickstarter. There are a lot of projects that you would never get funding for. You're a smaller company. You have a board game, and we're just looking at kind of the board gaming section right now. The big boys, they're not going to touch you. No one's going to give you any money because you don't know anything. So maybe you beg with family and friends. Maybe you have a prototype. And how do we get something to market? Kickstarter comes around, especially with the board gaming community, and now this idea that I will give you my money. I believe in your dream, and you will deliver a product to market. It was always the smaller customer. But if we look at Kickstarter, their model was getting you to believe in their brand. Crowdfunding, kickstarting, that's nothing new. I mean, if you scale that up, it's just VC. But in exploring that, it was building brand recognition. So yes, we've been burnt on a few things. Yes, there were some Kickstarters that didn't quite deliver as promised, but the platform itself, Kickstarter, they built up a brand. It's trusted, kind of like how eBay was, where it's like, wait, I'm going to go online. I'm going to get off Yahoo auctions, and I'm going to go online and pay money, and people are going to send me stuff. Well, what if they take my money? What if they don't give me a refund? What if the product isn't represented as we think it is? I mean, eBay built up brand recognition. Now you don't even doubt it anymore. So that was Kickstarter, building their brand recognition. But their model was very much Web 2.0. You do the work. You promote your own stuff. I mean, I might have some popular splashes on my page, but you promote everything. You do everything. You assume all the risk because I completely wash my hands of everything. If you fail, I have no obligation. It's just crazy how Kickstarter operates as a company. It's like Uber. How has it been? Continues to operate. Uber, you do all the risk. You put all the miles on your car. You assume all the liability, but I take a slice out of it. I mean, essentially that's Web 4.0 for you. Kickstarter was ahead of its time. So the idea that Kickstarter has no risk, you do all the work, they take a cut of your profits. But it was still attractive for smaller groups, for more independent products, because it was like, well, hey, I'm on Kickstarter, And Kickstarter has that brand recognition. Kickstarter is safe to use. Your credit card's only going to get charged $50 or your debit card or your bank account. But then we have players start to move in because it's like circling sharks. Something's in the water. I don't know what it is, but I want a piece of that action. And you started to have established board gaming companies look and say, well, we've been marketing this ourselves and we've been pushing this out ourselves, but we have to lay out the cash up front. We have to lay out the money up front to print it, to pay the designers, to pay the graphic artists, to get the raw materials. If we could jump on Kickstarter, we can get everybody else to pay for it. I mean, they have the projections. I've been in there with the Excel sheets projecting things out on a smaller scale. They know we're going to bring this, board game iteration 4 to market. This is exactly how much it's going to cost us to do it. So if we do the Kickstarter, we don't have to outlay any money. I get an interest-free loan. You assume all the risk as the creators because ultimately if I don't deliver or if I change it midstream, pray I don't alter the deal further. And pushing that out, it was great. So you saw all these massive companies just jump on board. Now, on a side note, these companies realized the secret sauce of just throw a lot of miniatures at it. Just throw tons and tons and tons of miniatures at it. And board gaming enthusiasts, wargaming enthusiasts, look, I'm not immune to this. My impulse control and self-control is next to zero when it comes to miniatures. You're like, rules, I don't even care about the rules. Like, look at all these miniatures. Well, on a side note, that cycle has ended where now we moved into expansions. Now it's like you can't just blitz me with 100 miniatures. I have about 10 titles on my shelf that have hundreds of miniatures. Wow, look, 10 expansions, season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got to get them all. And you look and you're like, wow, $90 core box, okay. But like Dark Souls, core box is stripped down and unplayable. And I need all the expansions and the mega bosses and the explorers and the adventure pack. And next thing you know, I'm in for like $600. Well, that's kind of worn down. Now it's like, well, I have 10 titles on my shelf with hundreds of miniatures and 30 expansions each. I mean, Dark Souls is out of control. It's an entire shelf. And I love Dark Souls. So now companies are like, we're going to unleash the mega bosses. Dark Souls kind of started that. And Zero Dawn continued it. But we see, like, now it's like the mega bosses. Look at Massive Darkness 2, where you have the oversized miniatures. And they show, like, a little GW Space Marine scale. And, like, they're massive, massive miniature because that is the new sell. So you see these companies. So now we're jumping back to Kickstarter. Slight tangent there. We're jumping back. So now you see these companies that are saying, well, I can get an interest-free loan. You, the consumer, assumes all the risk. And we're working. So now this leads into the shift. That was kind of the background to frame it. I felt like it was important for those of us new to the hobby. So we had Hero Quest reprint. And I won't go into a side tangent on that, but you have a big corporation, a famous board gaming company. I mean, it's a toy company, but board games, toys, a lot of strong IP, a lot of strong property. They released Hero Quest on their own personal Kickstarter clone crowdfunding source site. And the tech is there. The tech is there. And in terms of trust, well, there was never any trust with Kickstarter. It was all an illusion because, again, you assume all the liability. Kickstarter's like, whoa, we're not responsible for anything. Good luck. And if you go after these little companies and corporations or the bigger ones, you can't do anything. But it was an illusion in our mind. It was like Maya, right? This illusion in our mind. So you're moving into that, and now we saw with the Hero Quest Kickstarter, which I'm glad they released. Looking at that, just set up your own platform. Just run it yourself. As consumers, we've been conditioned where it's like, hey, there's this awesome project, and we're going to throw you a couple of side bones and a couple of like extra miniatures and things, and you're going to give us your money and at a minimum a year and a half up front. So at this point, it's like, why am I even going to bother with Kickstarter anymore? Because these companies are looking and saying, I want it all. It's not enough that Kickstarter takes whatever percentage they take. You know, if I do 15,000, they take $400, then I want that $400. I want it all. And as a corporation, capitalism, that's absolutely, I want every single penny. So I just question the turning point, like the fifth turning point. We're there. And more and more and more and more are shifting, and you're going to see more companies going on their own. Another side analogy, it's we've gotten used to over the internet kind of buying stuff and meeting up with stuff and picking up stuff with friends. And I'm not talking about like shady Craigslist stuff. I mean, like the other day, I needed a trunk to store some stuff. I just go on Facebook Marketplace, put in, 5-mile radius because I'm lazy, and what's there, and like 10 things come up, boom, shoot them an IM, good price. I can PayPal you. I'm old enough, I still use PayPal, right? Whatever you youngsters are using, I zap it to you, or we do the old school way, cash. I drive by, pick it up, I'm done in like 30 minutes. Buying something over the internet from someone and picking it up, like that's just kind of normal, how we do things now. 15 years ago, or how many years ago, people would look at you like you're nuts. So it's shifted. To do the Kickstarter thing outside of a Kickstarter platform, even 3 or 4 years ago, someone would look and be like, you're nuts, you need the Kickstarter protection. Now, no way. So I'm not saying we're there where it's like Fritz is going to launch his web store and crowdfund his own stuff. I mean, I don't have that clout, I don't have that name. But some of these bigger companies that like to launch a lot of zombie games, that I'm a big fan of their zombie games, both fantasy, modern, and futuristic. Why are they on Kickstarter? They're big enough. Just do their own thing. They've got a great track record. Keep all the cash. Do the whole Web 2.0. We do the work. We keep all the cash. We keep everything. So I just wonder, at this point, the turning point. So before I turn it over to the comments, when does the turning point officially happen and you can't come back? When Kickstarter gets acquired. That's where you start to see this cannibalization where the tech, I've been in the industry in a couple of things, and I've seen that with some, as things mature, looking and saying, okay, there's going to be not only competitors that want a slice of that pie, but also the shift in perception is such that it's going to be pulling away. So at the height, let's sell it, let's unload it. On a side note, one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my life as an entrepreneur was, and I knew better, but I let my ego get involved. I let my ego get involved because there's quite a pump up with it, where I had a business and it was doing well. I mean, it certainly wasn't my primary method of income, but it was doing well, and I was very proud of it, and I like to brag about it. It was a feather in my cap, and I could see things not so much starting to shift, but just the natural life cycle of the business was at its height, at its zenith, and I knew I should have sold it at that point. I had multiple buyers for it, and I should have just sold it. Nothing was wrong with it. It was still going. It still probably had, I was at the height, still probably had another 2 or 3 years at that height. And it wasn't like I want to milk it for another 2 or 3 years. I should have sold it because everything has a life cycle where then it goes down and it goes down and it goes down. And I knew better, but my own ego was such that I held on to it. It actually lost money, started losing money. And finally I had to pull the plug on it. And at that point, it was just done. So as an entrepreneur, always sell at the height. Always sell at the height. And if you have to hold on to it for ego, what I would have done if I couldn't escape my ego, I would have sold it and somehow maintained some share of it or a partnership of it or some sort of control over it so I could still not only get the cash out profit, but get a little bit of that income stream, even if it was minuscule. And from that perspective, still be involved and still have the ego pump and still be like, this is my baby. But that's kind of the difference between being a business person and an entrepreneur dealing with that ego. That is way off topic, but the point anyway, that's how you know when Kickstarter gets acquired by somebody, and it will, that's when the turning point starts to happen. That's the handwriting on the wall for the involvement. But I turn it over to you guys now and ask that genuine question. Kickstarter, it's established. We trust it. The model, the method works. Why should these corporations give Kickstarter anything, any cut, when we can fork over our money to them directly? They can alter the deal, they can change the deal, and they get an interest-free loan that they don't have to deliver on product a year from now, 2 years from now. And on top of that, They use it to produce everything and they release it to retail, and that's pure profit. I mean, that's just win, win, win.